And did you all want to took the words out of my mouth, want to start recording? Yes,
Yeah.
perfect. Great. So I will share my screen. But as I do, I'll just say hello. My name's Amanda. I am a research analyst at the Urban Institute, and I work with Cole and some of our other colleagues on the Campbell for Communities Scorecard, which is a scorecard that we built years in the making now to help community stakeholders assess the equity and the social impact of possible development projects. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. So I'll take you through now a little bit of the scorecard and how it works. So we started development on the scorecard in 2017 after Congress passed the legislation that authorized opportunity zones, which is a program that gives tax advantages to certain investments in lower income areas. The OZ legislation lacked reporting guidelines on project impacts, and we believe that in some cases, projects backed by these public investments might not always align with their community needs, or in the worst case, might exacerbate existing inequities. So the beta version of this tool was created to help project stakeholders assess impact specifically in that opportunity zone context. But we quickly realized that the tool had a ton of value outside of that context. We heard concerns from a variety of stakeholders who make funding decisions around new developments that they lacked good data to guide them. When faced with choices about what to do with vacant land or redevelopment opportunity, or how to prioritize, for example, like the ARPA or the IJA bipartisan infrastructure bill funds that are coming to communities now, community members need tools to be able to compare projects being proposed with their community needs, and city leaders need to be able to prioritize how to spend limited funds and incentives to projects that will make a positive impact for community members. So we revamped our beta version that had been for the Opportunity Zone project into this final scorecard that is aimed at helping local stakeholders of all kinds, from investors to neighborhood leaders and advocates to government officials and community members, to evaluate projects and weigh their needs against project components, and also help developers iterate in early planning to think through ways to make a project more impactful. And we know that one tool or one score does not provide all the information that someone needs to determine the social impacts of a project, but we hope that this tool can be one piece of a puzzle alongside a lot of different inputs, including community engagement and other factors. So getting into the tool itself, the scorecard is pretty straightforward. It's free to use online, and we can drop a link in the chat that will take you to all the scorecard information. It looks like a typical web-based survey. At the beginning of the scorecard, the user enters some basic information about the project, such as its name, location, the type of financing sought, and the amount. And then the user selects from among 4 project types, which you see here on the screen: residential, commercial, industrial, or operating business, or any combination of those 4. And then the following questions that you receive about what the project is actually doing are tailored to those different project types. We wanted to create a tool that could be used to evaluate potential social impact of projects across this broad range of project types, local markets, and local priorities. We knew that it could be difficult for local governments to make choices between projects offering very different benefits, for example, housing versus commercial retail. So we wanted to create a tool that could make some sort of apples to apples comparison across project types with a single score. We also wanted it to assess built, and I'll get into this a little bit more, but one way that we do this is by asking the user to rank a list of community priorities as they understand them across elements such as job creation, housing, environmental benefits, etc. And then the scorecard priorities. So for example, if you tell the scorecard that your community's biggest priority is housing, it will give more weight to your answers to the questions about housing, and so on. So after those initial questions about the basic project information, the meat of the scorecard is really these 7 sections that you see on the screen here, where users answer questions about their proposed project and what it's actually going to do. The community goals and priorities section, the user answers questions around efforts to involve the community in the design. And this is also where we ask about the ranking of those community priorities that I just described. And the other 6 impact areas, users respond to questions about features of the project, related to these different kind of overarching categories such as jobs, wealth building, housing, environment, health and social services, and transportation and connectivity. So for time's sake, I'm not going to walk you through the whole tool. It's long, there are a lot of questions, but just to give you a sense of like the feel of the interface, I wanted to share some screenshots. So this is what you see when you first log into the tool. This page prompts you to enter your email address. And once you do, you will be emailed a unique link to the rest of the tool. And the good thing about this unique link is that it's unique to your project and can be shared among team members or partners so that multiple people with project knowledge can collaborate on filling out the tool. We know that one person might not have the answer to all of these questions, so that allows you to pull in multiple people to help fill out the scorecard. This is an example of some questions in the community goals and priorities section, including that question that I've referenced a few times now that asks the user to rank their community priorities. As I mentioned, these priorities and how you rank them contribute to how the final score is weighted. And then here is an example of a few questions in the transportation and connectivity section. You can see that after the first yes or no question about transportation options, the respondent also has some space to add extra details. These written answers are printed in the final output of the scorecard, but they aren't incorporated into the score. But they allow the user to provide a little bit more nuance maybe around their yes or no answer. So after going through all of the questions, the user receives a scorecard score ranking their project on a 1 to 100 scale. The first page of the scorecard looks like this that you see on the right side of the slide here, showing the overall score as well as a breakdown across the social impact areas or the sections of questions that you answered. The following pages after this includes the full set of questions and responses from the scorecard. Projects scoring an 85 or higher are projected to provide strong social benefits that are well aligned with community priorities if the project is executed as described. Projects scoring less than 49 points are projected to be unlikely to provide social benefits and may conflict with or fail to align with community priorities. This scorecard can be downloaded as a PDF and is automatically emailed to the user along with a link to the user guide where they can interpret how to use the results. It is not shared publicly, so whoever the user is can take the scorecard and use it for a variety of purposes, whether it's bringing it, to the table for discussions with the developer, or Cole will talk a little bit more in the next few slides about other uses that we've seen. But the point is that the user gets to use the scorecard in whatever way it makes most sense to them. So I will pass it over to Cole to now talk about who can use this and how we've seen it used already by some different stakeholders.
Yeah, so I mentioned a few of these at the start, but the scorecard was designed with several key user groups in mind. Project sponsors can use the process of completing the tool to solicit input from residents and community-based organizations and make improvements that respond to community needs. Mission-driven investors can request a completed scorecard from project sponsors to evaluate the potential social impact of their investments, or to seek out new investments with the potential to deliver strong social impacts. And then local policymakers and public officials can request a completed scorecard to decide how to direct public financing and incentives to projects that are likely to advance community priorities and deliver positive social impact. And community-based organizations can request a completed scorecard as a condition of providing their support for a project. They can use the tool to negotiate a community benefits agreement, or they can call on local officials and potential project investors to require project sponsors to complete the tool.
Oh, there's a question in the chat from Caroline. A project sponsor is like the developer, like the person, the group in charge of the project?
Yeah.
Well, like in a housing situation, it would be like the housing developer.
Yeah, and for a housing project, it would be. Amanda could probably speak to more examples, but basically it's yeah, like the head, the lead,
like the owner, decision maker.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Whoever's making the decision. But yes, good question.
I think it's so. It seems like just to like summarize, it can be both be something like the project owner can be proactive about providing this, or if it's like a list, like a mission-driven developer, or it can be used as more like advocacy accountability tool, you know, from the pull or push on the other on either side.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so just to go over a couple of different examples to make it a little more concrete of how this is being used. So DC has used the scorecard since 2020. It has its own local opportunity zones tax benefit for qualifying investments. And one of 4 ways that opportunity funds can meet the criteria for this benefit is by scoring a 75 or higher on the scorecard. And then we also have seen it used by San Francisco's Office of Economic and Workforce Development, which has required the scorecard on 2 recent RFPs. So they use the scores above 70 as a priority for funding, and lower scores wouldn't disqualify the project, but above 70 are just prioritized for the first pool. And the scorecard threshold made up 30 points out of 100 total points in this particular RFP. And a few others, we've also worked with some other impact investors, CDCs, and local governments to use the tool in their own local processes. So a few of them are listed here. You can see from Cleveland, Kansas City, Detroit. And in addition, we've had over 600 unique entries into the tool. Many of them use the tool independently. So that was able to give us a lot of good data for refining the tool. And you can see the link to the scorecard there. I'll send this out in the Google group post as well. But if you want to test out yourself just independently, that is where you can do it. And I'll put it in the chat here too, just in case.
Yeah, so that is the information we have for you all. Would love to hear any questions that may have come up. Happy to answer them, or any thoughts you might have about potential use cases. And I can stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, or folks want to give examples if they have examples of the types of project or a specific project in your community that's being called Reservation 13 here in DC, that our mayor would like the football stadium to go back on to bring the football team back to the city, and others of us think there's higher uses of that land. So as somebody from the neighborhood, so that would be the kind of thing that that we could use it for. But if you have other ideas of or examples of can you put the project types in the chat too?
Yep, it is.
Copy that slide. And
yep, I can do that.
I think housing comes to, I don't know, I have housing stuck in my head, but just to make sure we are thinking about the full breadth.
Yep, it's residential, commercial, industrial, and operating business.
Got it.
Or any combination. So a multi-use development could, check multiple of these boxes for sure.
It's interesting. I think, one of the folks we were talking to wanted to figure out how to build almost like a go or no go for developers on using neighborhood data, right? So could you decide whether or not this is a good place to cite permanent supportive housing, for example? And so I was trying to figure out if there's a way that your interface could be useful to that discussion. And it seems like they could work together, but that this is really about evaluating the impact of what a project would do to the neighborhood, right? And trying to figure out what the, quantifying, the social benefit of the project. Is that how you would describe it?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and it is very focused on the neighborhood, like where the development is going. For example, a lot of the questions about jobs are focused not on like just simply how many jobs are being created, but like how many jobs are, like to what extent will people in the local community be prioritized for those jobs, like things around that. So it takes it like a little bit step further beyond the just like what is this doing, and it is more like what is this doing in this specific place and context.
Which
Really
doesn't
cool.
tell you, yeah, I think in combination that it seems like, Caroline, you have it right. Because it doesn't tell you, for example, all of the supportive housing is being put into this one neighborhood, you know?
Right.
It happens to be, you know, historically Black neighborhood with low incomes, and people are putting all the supportive housing there, you know, or yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on the site too, I'll say there's a PDF that just lists all the questions if you want to glance through them and not take the time to like click, you know, page by page through the survey. There should be a PDF on the website where you can just download the question text.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I could see that it would be like, kind of annoying to, or you would be like making up answers to try to, you know,
Exactly, yes.
you're hypothetical to just to get through the, see the whole piece, all the pieces.
I see a question in the chat for asking for more specific examples of how the results or findings have been used in one of the use cases. I think the most concrete use case we've seen recently is that San Francisco use case that Cole was talking about. We spoke to the folks at San Francisco, and you know, they used our tool as one input in a series of inputs for their RFP process for distributing some of these like economic recovery funds that they had. And like Cole said, like had a threshold in mind, like they would prioritize people whose projects that they were submitting to this RFP would score above a 70. But I think what was cool about this was that like it was only one input in many inputs. So like the C4C score, the Capital for Communities score made up 30 points of the possible 100 points in the RFP. So they had other questions in the RFP that got at things that might be like super specific to their local context that this tool like just isn't equipped to get at. So that kind of showed us like how this tool can be adapted and used in different places, and like used in a way where they're still, you know, taking in other supplementary information to kind of fill in the broader picture. I will say that we've also worked with LISC Detroit and a community development organization there. And they have been working with us because they had been thinking originally about creating their own kind of scorecard or tool, and then they heard about this scorecard. And so we've been doing some community engagement with them around the scorecard to see whether it's the right fit for their community, and in doing so filled out a few sample projects through the tool that they've seen recently in their community, and had some discussion around like, are these questions the right questions for your context? Like what is the score telling you? Is this meaningful to you? And so that was kind of an interesting use because it wasn't really the tool itself that we were using, but more so like the process of community engagement and like garnering conversation through the tool questions. Those are a few things that come to mind that we've seen recently. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be great for other presentations, Amanda, to have like, here's an example of a project that won. I don't know if the RFP is probably public, or like the DC ones, like just.
Yeah. And touch with
people
some of their
like
grantees to get the user perspective.
Feel about what's the results of this as as the question asks. So but it's reasonable that but the process, but having the local government adopt this as a process feels like a big deal. That's changing. That's a little bit of systems change, not that's
right. Yeah.
Changing some of the decision rules, resource allocations, or in a real way.
think my internet might have cut out for a second, so I missed what the last thing was said, but.
Oh, just that it's a good like example of like actually shifting where resources are going to and to align with the values that the values that the user has specified. Yeah, both Amanda and I are across the hall from each other and we're getting flashes about the internet being unstable. So Cole can close out if for some reason we and this evening, the tornado was earlier this week. So what's not even weather related.
Yeah, well, before we do, did anyone else have any final questions they want to ask? I think Amanda and Kathy might be frozen. I don't know if anyone else sees that, but yeah, so anyone can complete the tool, but it's the people who complete the questions, it's the ones who are sort of the project leads, the ones who are proposing a certain project or are completing the tool as a condition for getting some kind of benefit, or as a condition of okay, Kathy's back. There they are. It wasn't just me. Yeah, anyway, the question was about who is completing these questions. So anyone who is sort of completing it on behalf of their project is doing it. But you could also use the tool to advocate on behalf of, or to advocate, say, a local government to use the tool as part of their criteria to assess community impact as part of a benefit that they want to give out. So it's like Kathy was saying, it's the push and pull.
But it would need to be, you know, a group that's really familiar with the project to have the components known. So it wouldn't be that an advocacy group could necessarily fill it out. They could ask somebody.
Right.
You would have to be the person who like knows the project with all those characteristics. Or unless they provide all that information somehow in another public document that you plug in, but probably I'm guessing they probably wouldn't, they would only have parts of it maybe, but
yeah,
like you could send questions, you could copy the questions from Amanda's PDF and say, please give me these inputs, and somebody else could actually do the inputting. But it feels like the characteristic knowledge has to come from the people who know the project, and then they have to follow through. I feel like that's the other key thing, like the plans need to actually be implemented to reality.
This tool is very prospective. It is not, it is evaluating the project before it happens. And we've heard, users talk about the potential to, fill the scorecard out again a couple years after the development's actually been developed and see if they're actually like meeting what they thought they were going to meet in the beginning. So there's definitely potential for that use case as well.
An accountability tool.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know we're at 3:30. I just want to plug very quickly that I am also part of a different team at Urban who is working on a similar tool to evaluate municipal bonds. And so that will be coming this October time. It's similar idea, wanting to assess, this is specifically for racial equity of municipal bond offerings. Similar interface, but some different context, if that's of interest to anybody.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Amanda, for mentioning that. So yeah, we'll close it out. But as I said, if you're interested in TA, please let me know. Or if you want to connect us with anyone, be happy to do that. And I'll post a little more info about the scorecard along with this reporting to the Google group. But thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks, Paul and Amanda.